Hi, I'm Amanda Call. Now, usually when you're watching a video with me, I am doing some kind of traditional art. I'm often doing my comic pages on streams that look like this. I'm talking about different traditional art techniques and materials, but I do occasionally do some digital art, as I mentioned on the digital versus traditional video that I did a while ago. I do some digital art partially because certain clients request it, and partially because sometimes that's just the thing that the project that I'm working on requires. Now, because it's not the thing that I spend most of my time and energy on, I have not really invested a lot in getting super high-end digital art making stuff. This is what I've been using for a very long time. You can tell that I've had this one for a while because you can see the spots where I've worn the finish off where I draw the most. This particular one I've had for around 5 or 6 years after I replaced my previous one that was no longer really working that well, that at this point was probably like 16, 17 years old. Really old. And these are what I learned to do digital art with, so I'm pretty used to them, but there is always a certain amount of imprecision of having to draw over here and be looking somewhere else entirely. And so I found that I spent a lot of time having to go back and Control-Zing my way through places where I didn't quite hit the mark every time, and that was getting kind of tiresome. I felt like it was maybe time to move on with that. Additionally, I have a pretty big project coming up where I know I'm going to be doing a ton of digital artwork for it. You'll be hearing lots more about that coming up soon, I promise you. So in order to try to make the best use of my time and my energy, I decided that it was time to upgrade to one of those fancy drawing on the screen type tablets. I don't know if you've priced any of those recently. They're very expensive. They're very, very expensive. I could buy a lot of pads of Bristol and ink for that. So, considering that digital art is still only going to be a small part of what I do, even with one big project coming up, I didn't want to go all in on the super pricey, Cintiq type art making tablet. I looked around at what my different options were, and ended up going with this guy right here, the Wacom One. I watched a whole bunch of different reviews from a bunch of other different art YouTubers, and everyone seemed to agree that it was a really good tablet for a beginner digital artist. And obviously I'm not a beginner digital artist. I've been doing some digital art for a really long time, but I have nowhere near as many hours put into it as I do traditional art, obviously. But a lot of the drawbacks that they talked about as far as the level of capability that this particular tablet has were stuff that didn't really matter as much to me. You see, the type of digital art that I usually do is for stuff that is ultimately going to possibly or definitely be printed. So a limited color range, which was one of the big drawbacks everybody talked about, limited color range is not a problem because print is only capable of a limited color range. I don't need every possible beautiful light color that is available in digital art that you can see on a screen, because most of those colors do not translate to print anyway. Whereas the color capabilities of this particular tablet are well within the range of what can actually be printed. So there goes that concern. Other than that, I guess there's like some differences in the amount of sensitivity or whatever. I've literally never used one of these fancy Cintiq screens. As I mentioned, I've only used the little Intuos tablet where you're not looking at what you're drawing. I've never really used an iPad or anything like that to create artwork with, so I think that since I am not already spoiled on a nicer, higher-end touchscreen drawing tablet, I don't think that I will really find that I am too limited by this one, but I guess we will find out. Now comes the part where the person who can barely run their own computer tries to get this thing out of the box and get it working. So let's see how we do with that. Here, enjoy some sweet unboxing footage. The tablet was right on top. Then there's the pen. Electrical plug. And big old multi-ended cable thingy. I got the cable plugged into the tablet and the electrical plug okay, but then encountered an issue. What? What? What is... I don't... get it? Ah! There was another piece hiding in there. Okay. Okay, back on track now. And ta-da! It turns on! But I guess I didn't have the port situation quite right on the computer. No signal. A few adjustments and downloaded drivers later, and... Yep, yep. There we go. Oh, yep. There's my cursor. How do I get it to come over to this screen?
Windows Shift and arrow key to wherever your monitor is.
Shift. Aha! Thank you. And then I have to figure out where I want to put my keyboard while I do this, because I use a lot of hotkeys when I'm with my left hand when I'm drawing in Photoshop, because that's how I learned to do it. Maybe I can put it in my lap. Maybe that'll work. And I'll get my little footies out on this so it's at a more ergonomic angle. And get this cord unhitched from where it's all tangled on the edge of my desk. A few things I need to figure out yet. So I feel like the way that I'm sitting, I don't think is gonna work. I think what I need to do is I need to get this up and put this back up here, because this is like too low and I'm hunched. This is not a good situation. Let me figure out what I can do here. I'll admit that part of the problem is that I just don't really have the best digital art setup, or rather my digital art setup was keyed to what I was using previously and not at all keyed to this, which is a very different setup. How do I want to do this? So I asked my husband to come over and look at my setup and help me like brainstorm where I could, like, what I could do to solve this whole "this thing is too low" situation. And this is why it's good sometimes to have someone completely outside of the situation look at things for you, because he looked at it and was like, why don't you just put it on your drafting table? It's a good question. Why don't I just put it on my drafting table? So it's on my drafting table now, which also works out because I actually had to unplug my other monitor. I normally have 2 monitors on my computer, and I only have enough video input, output thingies, ports, stuff. I only have enough stuff on my tower for 2 monitors, so I had to unplug the one that was directly in front of me anyway, so there was really no reason for me to be sitting at my regular computer desk. It was not a thing I needed to do. So now I'm over here at my drafting table, which is already set up for me to sit and draw at comfortably. And just wasn't an option before for working on digital art when I was using the Intuos, but now I can just plop this tablet over here and just use this over here, and I've got my secondary monitor over here in case I need to look at reference or anything. So now we'll give this a try. I've got my keyboard in my lap so that I can do hotkeys, and I've got good clearance between it and the bottom of my drafting table. So we'll see. This should hopefully work. Although one thing that's funny that I did not think about is that I'm used to, when working on digital art, not having my hand in the way. Like, being able to see entirely around where my cursor is, and now my hand is there. So that's weird to get used to. Not something I thought about as like, oh, that's gonna be a thing you're gonna have to get used to. Why has this got this border on it? Let me tell you real quick about the piece I'm working on here. This is actually a really old illustration of mine from an adventure novel called Necropolis by Michael O. Varhola. It's being reused for a new gaming book from Skirmisher Publishing, and they wanted to have it colorized. I originally drew it to be black and white illustration, so coloring it is a little bit of an interesting challenge. Not to mention it's like really old at this point, and some parts of the drawing make me cringe a little. In the end, I think it came out pretty good, though. Yeah, I think this setup is actually probably going to work pretty well. Good call. So, now I have tried the tablet out. I've tried a couple of different things, pretty much everything I'm gonna do on it, and you know what? I really like it. I do definitely feel like I can see what some of the complaints are that people who are used to higher-end tablets might have with it, but I'm not used to a higher-end tablet, so this is pretty great as far as I'm concerned. And I think it will be perfectly suited to my comics coloring style of digital art, which is pretty much the only thing that I ever do digitally. So I would say this was a pretty worthwhile investment, and I'm looking forward to making a lot more art with it. Thank you for coming along with me on this little journey, and hopefully soon you'll get to see what the big project is that I purchased this for, along with lots of other fun stuff I get to make. Thanks everybody, and I will see you next time. Bye! Oh no, it actually recorded. It didn't crash. Amazing.